Hey guys, Maniac here with GameAccess.net doing our fourth podcast. My apologies for not having this podcast recorded as early as I'd like it to or as soon between the last one, but given the fact of a few factors. One, the holidays, of course, Christmas and New Year's, and the fact is that I've been sick throughout some of this is kind of the reason why I kind of held off recording these. I had a cold, and you don't want to hear my nasally voice doing this, especially given the fact of, well, this is an audio recording, and when your voice is bad, you don't want to do an audio recording. So that's the reason. I wanted to talk a little bit about the subject of this podcast, and this is going to be kind of unusual because I'm going to be talking about a subject. I'm going to be talking about a subject that, in all intents and purposes, only seen one game release, which is unusual. I've talked about subjects that have had, 5 game releases, 3 game releases, multiple game releases are the subjects I've been discussing. So why am I talking about a gaming franchise that's only seen one release so far? There's really not too much to talk about when you think about it. But the truth is that no, there is stuff to talk about with this franchise. There's a lot to talk about this franchise, and it's kind of interesting. And this is why I actually chose this, was that even though there has only been, up to this point of recording, one official release of content, one official game release. One is on its way. It's been announced. It's going to be out within probably the next couple of months. So another game is coming. This is a major fledgling franchise. This is going to be like a next major franchise. All signs point to that, and that's why. And to say nothing of the fact that we've known about this franchise for 5 years, 6 years when it was first announced. So there's plenty for me to talk about. So I'm going to do that. And the subject of this week is Alan Wake. Now, I'm making no secret, if you go on the information page of my site and look me up, that I used to work for various sites under the GameSpy networks. When that all closed down, I basically didn't do anything in the gaming industry for several years, although I kept following it in those years. I didn't write anymore. And then I decided last year, or in the year before, that I really wanted to. I started the process of creating my own site. Back when I was working for the Max Payne site, after Max Payne 2's release, the developers of Max Payne 2 and 1, and creators of the Max Payne franchise, Remedy, had announced that they were going to be working on Alan Wake next. And this was, as far as everyone was concerned, especially on my end, with my site, major news. I mean, obviously, Max Payne had gone over extremely well. The first certainly more than the second, but be perfectly honest, if I had to compare the first and second, I loved them both equally. They both were great and a lot of fun, and very happy collections on my PC shelf. We knew what Remedy could do at this point. We knew that Remedy could do great things, and I fully expected, as well as many of my peers did as well, that this new Alan Wake game, which we did not know much about at the time, was going to be just as fantastic and highly polished as Max Payne was. And I actually did get an interview with them. After that year's E3, which I was not invited to, because by the time GameSpy merged with IGN, the invites stopped coming, even though the sites were still operating. The invites to E3 stopped coming, actually. That's unusual. So I didn't go to E3 2005, where it was. I believe it did have a showing there. But I did, however, get an interview with the two guys from Remedy, and because obviously of my pedigree, obviously it was a Max Payne site. They were fine with doing an online email interview with the guys who ran the Max Payne site, and I, along with one of the other writers of the site, Diego, who goes by the handle of Avenir, drew up, talked to each other for a while. I told him that I had secured the interview, and he and I were spitballing ideas back and forth about what kind of questions to ask. And eventually we did come up with a polished list. I don't remember exactly because this was so long ago. I won't take full credit for that list. Obviously, he deserves just as much credit for that interview as I do. And in fact, actually, if you read the interview, it's equal credit to both of us for working on it. I came up with some questions. He came up with some questions. He eliminated some of my questions. I eliminated some of his questions. We improved each other's questions. You know, it was very much an equal opportunity thing. I will, however, the few questions that we did ask, the plenty of questions that we did ask, there was one that actually was interesting. It was the last question we asked, which was, ironically enough, his question that he wanted to get into last minute, which was if they were going to, if because of and even at the time this was an issue, you know, this was an unusual game that was coming out from an up and coming developer. You know, he was curious if they were going to kowtow to the market research, because back then, just as now, market says you make a game, you make that type of game. Whatever's going on at the time, there's going to be 100 of them by next year. And that's what happens. That's why zombies took off. Before that, it was World War II. Before that, it was cyberpunk. Now it's modern war. You know, now it's present day battlefield stuff. That's what everyone's doing now. So back then there was that concern that there was going to be some of that, and obviously I thought that was unfounded. I didn't think Remedy was going to do that, but I did add the question to the list just as soon as I finished it, and I sent that off to Remedy. Remedy emailed us back with the full interview, answered all of our questions. The two favorite question gems that I remember from that interview, which I actually posted it up. I actually went through. Obviously, the Max Payne site is down. You can't access it anymore. But I was able to pull it from the depths of the Internet Archives. Right before Alan Wake did come out, I actually did post that as a blast from the past. There were some interesting tidbits, actually. Alan Wake was originally designed to be a multi-platform game. It was going to come out on PC and the next generation consoles, which at the time were the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. So it was going to be a multi-platform game originally. So they were banking on that. And one of my favorite questions was that I asked, because you're targeting the next generation consoles, does that mean you're going to be targeting next generation PCs? Now, please take into account that this was 2005. So a computer in 2005 was nowhere near as powerful as a computer it is nowadays. And to be perfectly honest, in a lot of cases, especially with some of the processing power on those consoles, the consoles did actually have some pretty good hardware on them, particularly with the CPU configurations and things like that. Some of the graphics packages were nothing, were not too revolutionary, but the CPU configurations were actually more advanced at the time than what we had in 2005. And I did remember asking them if they were planning on targeting next generation PCs. And they said they were going to scale the PCs to some extent. I turned out to be pretty foreseeing in that one, because by that next year when they started showing it at the Intel at the Intel show in 2006, they were showing the game on their computers at the time. They didn't really go too much into depth about what they were showing it on the hardware, but they did say it was a Core 2 Duo with NVIDIA graphics. And they didn't go further into that. But that was next generation PC stuff at the time. When the Core 2 Duo launched, that was in 2006. Actually, well, let me rephrase it. In 2005, the Core 2 Duo was considered to be next generation CPU processing and everything else. Obviously, that's now obsolete, of course. People are using the new Intel cores, as well as AMD has its own answer to that stuff with the multi-core AMD Phenoms and everything else. So I did totally call that, as well as the fact of that eventually later on they also had announced that it was going to require Windows Vista because of probably things with the shaders and stuff like that, which was again also next generation back in 2005. So I totally got that one. The other one that actually was Avenir's was the answer to his question, which we asked at the very end. Were they going to, or how were they planning on answering to publisher pressure to make the game more general audience? And they said, well, we're going to be financing this ourselves. So Avenir's got total credit for that one, because that was, I thought, a really good question to ask. So we got our questions back. They're, we're happy about it. And then, of course, Max Payne's site shuts down, and the game mostly does go dark. We did see the Intel show, which impressed everyone, especially the Intel guys. I don't think the Intel guys knew what they were getting into, really, when they saw that demo, when they saw what they could do with that processor. I mean, they were saying they were running tornadoes off one core on that thing. I mean, that was a really impressive demo, and unfortunately, we never actually got to see some of that stuff in the game. They showed the day-to-night transitions in real time. They rendered tornadoes right there on the spot. It showed the original open world aspects of the game. A whole lot of cool stuff that never ended up in the final version of the game. So if you can find that video somewhere, which you probably could, just look up Intel Alan Wake 2006. I really recommend watching it, because it's a really funny video. And it really did look cool. And that was a really cool way to show what was going on with the game. And I think by that point, everyone was really interested in the game itself. The first teasers, of course, came out in 2005. And everyone became interested in it immediately for two reasons. One, the teaser was kind of cool. It showed Alan rushing to a lighthouse. It showed the early plot line of the game, which had to do with the fact of Alan's girlfriend had gone missing, and he met another woman that looked almost exactly like that. I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's a movie called Vertigo that reminds me very much of that. I kind of heard that plot line before. If you're interested in hearing a movie about that plot line, then please look up Vertigo, because that really does have a very similar plot line to that. That is not the plot line they went in the final version of the game, but the early plot line was very similar to Vertigo, reminded me a lot of Vertigo. And so there was that plot line that was being talked about. It was very interesting. Everyone was really excited about it. I think mostly people were excited because these were the guys that made Max Payne. That's originally why. I mean, I thought Max Payne was revolutionary in so many respects. I could not wait to see what Remedy was going to do next. But after 2006, the game really went dark. There was the E3 promo in 2007. Remedy announced that Microsoft was taking over the exclusive publishing rights for the Xbox 360 and PC version. Because they had exclusive publishing rights, that meant the PS3 version was out, and they weren't doing that anymore. And the PC version was going to require Windows Vista. Now, for those of you who aren't really familiar with what the original stuff and what the original promises were for Windows Vista, there were two things. One in particular was the Live Anywhere system, which has since been kind of moved to more simply the Games for Windows Live system and the Windows Phone system, both of which did not meet the original Live Anywhere specifications or promises. And from what I can tell online, everyone universally hates both. So Microsoft hasn't really been pushing that too much. And I do think that with recent times going the way they are, I think Microsoft is kind of bowing out on that kind of promises, and they're moving over to hardware that's like they've started developing mobile phone apps for the iPhone, for example. That was like a big surprise for me. I was figuring that if they were going to release like a live app, it was only going to be on the Windows Phone, and and if they did release it on the Mac, it was only because the Windows Phone failed. We'll see what's going on with that, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The important thing to remember about that also, the early stuff about Vista was that they were going to only be allowed to, that was going to be the only operating system that was going to support DirectX 10, which meant that if you had a DirectX 10 graphics card or DirectX 10 shaders, you would not be able to make use of them if you were using Windows XP. By the way, those rules are still in effect. I mean, obviously it's been, it's 2011 now. I'm sorry, it's 2012 now. Everyone I've noticed either has Windows Vista, Windows 7, or their computer is just dead and broken from old age. So yeah, Windows XP does seem to be phasing out, except on the business side, which is actually starting to lose market share as well. The business side does seem to be going to 7. But the thing was that Windows Vista and Windows 7 were both designed to be used for more modern hardware, and they were not planning on updating Windows XP to do that because there was no reason to. Windows XP was dead. They were going to kill it. And That means if you are still unfortunate enough to use a Windows XP system, you'll notice that there are no more updates for it unless absolutely necessary, and you're getting viruses more often because they're exploiting vulnerabilities that Microsoft is no longer patching. Trust me, I've had plenty of customers that have had that problem. So I guess the reason why they did it was not so much because Microsoft was forcing them to, but because I guess they wanted to make use of things that were only going to be available to Vista, in Vista. That was extremely controversial at the time of 2007 because Vista was universally hated and 7 was not even announced at that point. But there was reasoning behind it. There was certainly logic behind it. I certainly don't blame them for it. So the years pass, and we don't see anything. There's no real trailer shown in 2008. I don't actually was this showing? I'm sorry, I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to remember now, and I actually now that I think about it, I think that E3 showing was in 2006. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain that trailer that showed the Vista exclusive video was 2006 and not 2007. I'm not totally certain about that, but I'm pretty sure now that I think about it, I think it was a 2006 trailer. But if I'm wrong, just leave a little blurb about that. So, as far as I know, in 2007 and 2008, there weren't any showings of the game. And people were still thinking about it because of the initial stuff. And everyone thought it was a very interesting game, certainly. But they stopped talking about it. There was, the Remedy guys, I think, were doing these tours and stuff like that, but they weren't showing anything. I mean, every once in a while, they really went dark. And I think the reason why they went dark is kind of because that was at the time when they started retooling the game for their new ideas. They created the new story, they created the new... obviously they still had the engine in place, but they were no longer going to make it open world like they did originally. And a few other things. And the reason why I know this is because I've watched a lot of the documentaries and I've read a lot of the behind-the-scenes books and stuff like that. So I'm kind of piecing together my information based upon what I've read and seen. So that might have been around the time when they started really retooling the game. Obviously, like I said, they already had the graphics engines, they already had all that stuff, they already had the publishing teams in place. But I think that they really did a bit of a project adjustment at that time, and they didn't really want to show anything until they had it more finalized. So then E3 2009 comes around, and Sam Lake takes the stage. And he meant business. Sam really meant business when he took that stage. And they showed Alan Wake, what would become the closest thing. Well, it was pretty much the finished version of Alan Wake, or at the very least, it was like the final. It was like this is what Alan Wake is going to be. To the whole E3 Microsoft crowd, and the crowd just went crazy. Was sending out text messages to all of my friends. I specifically remember watching that E3 feed live when it was being telecast, and just going crazy and sending out text messages to all my friends saying, "You have to turn on, you have to turn on the TV right now. Sam Lake is on television. He's taking the stage." And they did. And we got to see that for the first time, and everyone just went crazy. Obviously, what they showed was pretty much, I think, the opening of Chapter 2 for the most part, at least the opening action segments of Act 2. I'm sorry, Chapter 2, or Episode 2, whatever you want to call it. They did retweak it for the final version of the game, but for the most part, it's pretty much, it was that sequence. And it was certainly a good sequence. It was a really good sequence, actually, and everyone went crazy for it, and everyone was really excited about it. And, of course, they did have the showings at the E3 show, but, again, I didn't start going to E3 again until 2011. And, that was the major thing. Now, there was no E3 2010 showing because, of course, Alan Wake came out by that point. Alan Wake came out in May 2010. That was when it was announced. That was when it was released. Now, for such a starting franchise, They actually did have quite a few interesting things with it. There was enough of demand for the limited collector's edition, which they released. There was some actual really cool art books that were released. There was the novelization. The hint guide was fantastic. It's one of the best looking hint guides I've ever seen. And there was a promise, of course, from Remedy that there was going to be DLC releases as well as, how do I put this, future games, released in the Max Payne universe. There was also the announcement that there was going to be the live-action prequel series called I believe it was, what do you call it, Night Falls? No, Bright Falls. They called it the Bright Falls miniseries, a 6-episode miniseries that they did. That was in live action, which kind of set the tone and set the stage about what was going on just before Alan and Alice arrived. It was a really cool moment. It was a really cool series. I was kind of disappointed at how slowly Microsoft was to release it. They were supposed to release it every week, a new episode. They changed it to 2 episodes every other week. The websites, however, kept to it. They kept to the schedule. But the Xbox Live System Marketplace did not, which was disappointing. Now, if you haven't seen the Bright Falls series, I really don't want to spoil anything for you, but I'm going to. So, if you haven't seen the series, stop the tape. If you're not interested, then just keep listening. Or if you have seen it, I'm sure you have your own theories. These were my theories. The episodes follow basically a reporter who's going in there to interview Dr. Hartman. He's having problems with his relationship problems. He doesn't really want to. He's having problems with finding steady work and steady pay for his work and that sort of thing. So it's very similar to Alan in that respect, that he's they both follow a writer. There's he does interact with some of the people in the story. Like Rose, he does interact with her. He interacts with Dr. Hartman. Don't really think I remember anybody else specifically from the game that he interacts with, but it might have been a cameo here in the background, here or there. So, what happens to him? He starts noticing that he's waking up in weird places in the woods. He's having lost, times of blackouts and stuff like that. Specifically after meeting Dr. Hartman for the first time. Can't really remember anything about that. And he thinks he finally starts deducing that he might be getting up and leaving while sleeping, or at the very least while night goes on. And it's noticed that the town is pretty creepy, actually. They're very secretive about it. He can't seem to grasp really anybody willing to talk to him except one, looked like an old flame actually of his, that works for the works reporting in Bright Falls. And eventually what does happen is that he gets lost forever. My guess is he became a Taken. That's my guess. He probably was taken by the darkness. I kind of figure. If you don't believe me, kind of rewatch it. It does seem like that. And the very end, of course, he's gone forever, basically. Very sad, very disappointing, but I think this was to kind of show that the people that were involved in the game, that the bad people, quote unquote, were not really bad. They were people at one point, but there's no helping them once they're taken. There's just no helping them. And that's, I thought, very interesting. I thought that was kind of cool. It made me think twice about, after having played the game, who I was fighting and who I was attacking, and I had sympathy for them. Which is really cool. I think Zombie Stories is very similar to that. Like, you feel sorry for the fact that you are attacking a zombie, but there's really no helping them once they are a zombie. That kind of thing. And so that series is released. The game is very close to being released. And I remember release night being there at midnight at my store. And the reason why is because, of course, they were doing the Red Dead Redemption midnight release which was released on the same day as Alan Wake. But I talked to a lot of I talked to the clerks, and they all said the same thing. It's like, if the game is coming out tomorrow anyway, we're going to be open anyway. By all means, if you got the pre-order, the game is going to be out that day. We will sell it to you. We don't have a problem with it. We're not going to hold it back just because we're not doing the midnight release for that game. If it's being sold tomorrow, once the 1201 passes, we are legally allowed to sell it to you. So, by all means, come on in, and we will give it to you. And I specifically remember seeing the hint book that Prima was doing. Now, Prima's been doing something kind of interesting recently. They've been actually doing collector's editions of hint guides. I mean, hint guides of recently, a lot of people are saying, well, what do I need a hint guide for? This is, there's no reason for it. Or I have the internet. And I say, you cheap bastard. No, I'm just kidding. And the truth is that, yeah, they're pretty much obsolete nowadays. When you think about them, you don't have to spend money on them because some guy is gonna write up an FAQ with a list of cheats. You can go to some website, find them, download them, and basically use that to help you get through the game. Totally true. However, I consider these new version of hint guides, these new generation of hint guides, to be more collectibles than actual hint guides. Now, of course, they are still hint guides, of course. But they are very collectible when you think about them. They've got some very good production value on them. They're beautiful, beautiful, just beautiful artwork on the inside. Everything from the lettering to the location of just all the stuff. Very well made. And on top of that, they're releasing hardcover art books now. For a long time, they were bundling two books together. They usually you could buy a bundle of like the art book for the game, as well as the hint guide, and then pay like a little bit less, like pay $10 less than you would for each of them separately. Which is actually a pretty good deal if you already get that on top of the 10% off you get if you pre-order the game in the first place. You usually get it customary about 10% off. It's still cheaper to buy the hint book off Amazon. You can usually get $10 to $15 off, in some cases $20 off on those things, depending upon how expensive they are. Just buying the thing off Amazon, even with shipping costs. So consider that too. And if you've actually gone through the Alan Wake strategy, it's called the Official Survival Guide. There's some really cool stuff in there, like ads for various things, the Oh Dear Diner menu, just ads for the Majestic, and all kinds of cool stuff. Just the town maps and all based upon all the original game artwork and stuff like that. It's really, as well as pretty much an entire script for the game. There were some tidbits on there that I had even missed my first playthrough, so that I thought was really cool. So, if you can track that down, I totally recommend it. The art book, on the other hand, is also well made. It's a hardcover art book. It's got some fantastic art in it, but not too much on the case of writing. There's not really too much information written in them. There's a foreword by Sam Lake, which is great. But for the most part, a lot of the descriptions in the game are very limited, as well as there's actually typographical errors in it. Like there were repeated paragraphs on a few pages that nobody picked up on. And that felt kind of cheap. But that having been said, it was, they got to see a lot of the stuff, like the reference stuff, a lot of background about the game, like levels in the game that were cut, demos of the game that didn't end up in the final version of the game, and some of the original art and photos that they took, as well as some of the stuff that they worked on when they were working on the open world aspects of the game. And one thing that I was actually sad to lose when I found out about it, there was actually, if the game had been an open world game, there was going to be an abandoned dirt track which you could use to drive stolen cars on, and you could do time trials on. I thought that was kind of cool. It's really simple. I'm sure the reason why they talk it out is because it just didn't fit the atmosphere very much, but it was a cool little Easter egg. I thought that would have been cool if they had kept it in the game. Everyone just likes little Easter eggs and stuff like that. So if you kept it like that, if you kept it like it was just an Easter egg, it would have been fine as that. I would have considered it fine. There's also something written in the game that there's a ball puzzle that was originally intended to be an interactive ball puzzle that you could use to show off the physics engine. It says it in the hint book. It says it in the art book. Go find it in the game. We're not going to tell you where it is. I found it. It's in one of the rooms in Chapter 5. Or is it Chapter 4? No, it's... I can't remember. It's in when Alan is in Dr. Hartman's clinic. It's in one of the other patient rooms. So yeah, you can find it there. So that I would recommend looking for that. That was a pretty good book. I also have a friend that's reading the novelization right now and told me that it's pretty much straightforward, the game. There's really not too much that's added. There's no real major stories that you aren't familiar with if you had played the game in the novelization. Like, there's nothing super added to it, but it does connect the dots in some cases. Not like in any big major twist way or anything like that, but it's there. It's not. I wouldn't consider it a necessary purchase. I haven't really purchased it because, like I said, if you played the game, you pretty much know the story. What I would consider a major purchase and pretty much a required purchase is that limited collector's edition of Alan Wake, because that is worth a whole lot as far as I'm concerned, particularly because of the Alan Wake Files book. Now, the collector's edition of the game itself was, if I can remember correctly, I believe $80 at release, which was actually a pretty damn good deal. It looked like a bound book signed by Alan Wake of a book called Alan Wake. It had the texture and feel of of like a book would. Was really, really cool. Was really, really well made. And inside of it were three things. One, there was a game case, so it had its own DVD case for the game, with the DLC for the first downloadable episode, which was not yet released at the time, but would be active when it was released. Then there was the 2-disc bonus disc. There were the two bonus discs. One was a CD, which had the soundtrack on it, and the other was the DVD, which had all the behind-the-scenes stuff, as well as the downloadable content in it. Particular downloadable content being the commentary, as well as some gamer picks and themes and stuff like that. Now, the disc itself that had the bonus content on it was an Xbox 360 disc, so it wasn't playable on DVD players or Blu-ray players or anything like that, unfortunately. I prefer my discs to be like that. I prefer, give me a DVD so I can watch it on, I can watch my content on anything. But unfortunately, for some of these Xbox 360 games now, they basically are deciding just to make them Xbox 360 discs. It breaks compatibility with DVD players and Blu-ray players, but you're not going to play. You can't play these discs on Blu-rays because the Xbox 360 doesn't have an internal Blu-ray player, and you can't get high definition video on a DVD. So, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And on top of that, if you want to have downloadable content or installable content, it's got to be an Xbox 360 disc. So I get that. That being said, it does play on any Xbox 360. So if you got a few Xbox 360s, you can watch it on any Xbox 360 you want, and you can download that content on any Xbox 360 you want. It's not locked to one download, which is fantastic. So that's cool. The documentaries themselves are very interesting because it has some really good interviews with a lot of the guys from the game. They got a lot of guys who made the game. Tell a very good, concise story about the history of Remedy. There's several documentaries on the history of Remedy, the making of Alan Wake, and that sort of thing. And it included a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that had already been released online, like the dev diaries and stuff like that, the Building the Thriller some of the stuff that had already been released online was included with it, which was pretty cool. As well as all the cinematics were included with the original storyboards with them that you could use picture-in-picture. That was cool. That was a cool feature. Of course, the game itself also did have a feature that you could rewatch all the cutscenes that you wanted, which again was nice. If trust me, if you're going to have pre-rendered cutscenes, have a cutscene viewer in the game. As far as I'm concerned, I want that. I want that feature in there. It was kind of funny that I really liked them in the Resistance games. But it wasn't in the portable Resistance game. And I really liked it in Uncharted games, but it wasn't in Uncharted 3. It had to be patched in. I think a lot of people demanded it to come back, is my guess, because they patched it in. So yeah, that's like one feature I just love, is the cutscene viewer. I just want to have popcorn and watch the cutscenes. So that's the bonus disc. As for the second bonus disc, which is the CD, That was really cool because it had a lot of the soundtrack. There wasn't too much licensed music in it, probably for legal reasons, but it did have a lot of the game themes and stuff like that, especially the more popular ones. But it did also have one of the tracks from the Old Gods of Asgard. Now, anybody who's played the game knows that Old Gods of Asgard was a band in the game, and two tracks from the Old Gods of Asgard credited to the Old Gods of Asgard are in the game. One of them is called Children of the Elder Gods, and the other one is called, Poet in the Muse. And if you've been on my website, you've probably seen that music video I did make for Poet in the Muse. And so there's that. But only Poet in the Muse was actually included with the bonus disc. If you wanted a copy of Children of the Elder Gods, you got basically, this really hasn't been released. You can listen to it, though, on in the game, and you can also listen to it on the Old Gods quote unquote official website. You can listen to the MP3 on that site for Children of the Elder Gods. I thought that was pretty cool. Both of them fantastic songs, and of course, in case you guys don't know, I'm going to give you a huge secret right now. The Old Gods of Asgard do not really exist. The band who made them is, of course, Poets of the Fall. The band, they recorded under the fake name of Old Gods of Asgard, probably for legal reasons. They can't officially acknowledge that they are indeed the Old Gods and the Poets of the Fall at the same time. However, the credits of them, both of the license track that they did use from the Poets, which was, of course, the song War, which is another fantastic song, which I totally recommend listening to, and used very well in the game. You cannot actually, how do I put this? There's no, as far as I know, there's no CD release of those songs, at least not legitimately. I think there might have. I can't remember. I don't know if they might have started taking downloads of them for sale on the Poets official site, but I just don't remember. I don't think they did. I know that they do sell downloads on the Poets site, and you can definitely get them through iTunes, certainly, if you want the any of the Poets albums. But I don't think the Old Gods of Asgard have any album release. Although I did recommend to the Remedy guys doing a vinyl release of those songs, like it's on singles, like an A-side, B-side kind of thing, and getting the Poets to sign it for some reason, which I would not go into. I did recommend that as something they should sell in their Alan Wake store, as well as light up Barry Wheeler. I thought that would be funny too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That was included with the soundtrack. And the final thing I wanted to talk about from the limited collector's edition was, of course, the book. The Alan Wake file book. This was written by Clay Stewart, who is a character that appears once in the game during Alan's nightmare. He's never really... He says his name, but we never see him in the rest of the game. We don't know who he was or what he was supposed to represent. We just see him die, and again, this was in Alan's dream. Clay Stewart apparently wrote this whole novel when he realized that he was having dreams with this guy, Alan Wake, and he found out that Alan Wake was actually real. He assumed when he was starting to have these dreams that Alan Wake was not real, or he was just a figment of his imagination, or just something of his dreams or something like that, until he saw an interview with Alan Wake with the same mannerisms, same voice, on television, which he had not seen before. He was already having the dreams by that point. He had seen Alan Wake, so it wasn't something subconscious. You can't subconsciously think of something that's not going to happen. If he couldn't possibly have imagined Alan Wake because he wasn't even familiar with Alan Wake's books until he saw that interview, and he was already having the dreams by that point. So he thought that was very odd and coincidental, and he basically sought out to track down Alan Wake. It cost him his wife and daughter, so meaning that they divorced. He ended up divorced, but he did go to Bright Falls about a year after Alan had been there. And he was, based upon his dreams and everything else, had his own assumptions, which were included in the book. And like I said, I don't recommend reading the book until after you've completed the game because there are spoilers. Because the book does go into a little bit about what happened after the game. In particular, Clay Stewart did mention after traveling there, he still saw the fresh bullet holes in some of the buildings. Well, they weren't fresh anymore, but he still did find the bullet holes that Alan had left during, I'm sure, that town shoot-up at night. He said he did find some of them. He did interview some people, including Barry, who really wouldn't tell him anything. Dr. Hartman was still alive, because I think he did interview him. Again, would tell him nothing. He was also convinced that Clay Stewart, he also had his own theories about the FBI guy, Nightingale, who is not really going into too much in the game. He's a foil, certainly, but he's not really. They don't really delve too much into his backstory, except to say that he was a drunk. He was probably operating without orders, and he was a horrible human being. And that worked, I thought. I think on the game's level, that did work. His background was, and that what Clay Stewart was aware of, he kind of delved into it a bit, was that Nightingale had lost his partner at some point while being in the FBI, very similar to possibly darkness-related things. Taking to the bottle, becoming an alcoholic, and starting to have the dreams that Alan did. Clay Stewart was convinced that Nightingale was a dreamer just like he and Alan were, which is why he was so focused on Alan. Maybe he figured Alan knew something was causing this. Nightingale was certainly wrong, but Stewart could understand why, at least. And of course, Nightingale had gone missing, Nightingale had left his files, and Stewart found them. Stewart assumed that if Nightingale was to have stayed at the Majestic, which he did, he would have possibly hid his files in the safe. In the vents. And if you actually do visit Nightingale's room in the Majestic in the game, you will find that there's something stuffed in there. You can't get back there, but you can see that there's something stuffed back there. And Stewart found it. He looked, he found them, and he used those to publish. He published them in the book. He also found a whole bunch of other manuscript pages about people that were being taken, stuff that Alan had not found, probably because it didn't really involve the pages. So the first game comes out. I get to play through it. Fantastic. I love every second of it. I didn't want it to end. And to be perfectly honest, neither did a lot of the reviewers online. The game did end with a bit of a cliffhanger. Left some things untied, obviously because they were thinking about doing a sequel or doing further Alan Wake games in general. But for the longest time, right after the DLC came out, which everybody was expecting, obviously the first DLC came out, anybody who bought a full version of the game got that for free. Used copies did not get it. And anybody, basically, it was only the second DLC that was actually charged for, and it wasn't actually that much in comparison to other DLCs that included single-player campaigns. It was only 560 Microsoft points as opposed to the usual 800 Microsoft points. So that I thought was fairer. So about a year and a half, well, actually a year happens. A year passes. And even though, with the DLC not really, it was furthering the plot, it was really setting up the fact that they were going to do a sequel. I don't know if anybody's seen the end of the second DLC episode, but it was very clear that Alan started writing again and that he was planning on writing himself out of where he was stuck. That was important, I thought. And it begged for a sequel. Now, everyone used to remind me of, my friends used to remind me that the time difference between Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2 was about 15 or 16 months. They had all the tools in place, they had all the people in place. They could just make Max Payne 2. Here you had kind of the same story. All the people were in place, all the tools were in place, and all the software was in place. All the graphics engines, the hardware, everything else. It was all in place. At least if they wanted to continue with Xbox 360 development. If they wanted to do like handheld or something like that, they would have to do something different. But for the most part, they had the Xbox 360 tools in place. They had the dev kits. They had the engine. They could just make another game. I'm not saying that that's quick or easy, but they could. And about a year passes and E3 turns up. And I actually get a pass for that. And I'm really excited because it was my first E3 to go to in years. As I arrive in Los Angeles the day before the start of the show, actually it was 2 days before the start of the show, 1 day before the start of the pre-shows, I get in there in the Microsoft line to get a badge. It turns out I was not on the list because I wasn't invited by Microsoft to their press conference, although I was invited to Ubisoft's conference. I guess my Microsoft conference invite must have gotten lost in the mail or something. And so I found myself killing some time waiting in the Microsoft line to get a badge fruitlessly for their press conference. And as I'm in line, this was around 4 o'clock local time, I see somebody that I kind of recognize in the line. And it looked like one of the Remedy developers. So I happened to know what his Twitter feed was, and I checked his Twitter feed, and it confirmed he was at the Los Angeles Convention Center, as was I. So after I get my my Ubisoft badge to get into their show, which was going to be the next day, I pass by him and I say, "Hey, what's going on with Alan Wake 2?" And he's like, "What?" And I said, "Hi, I'm Maniac." And he recognized me, of course, from the Alan Wake forums and from a few other things. I think that's what he seemed like he recognized the name, because I've done plenty of Alan Wake coverage over the time. I think by that point I had actually released the parody video that they were doing. I don't know if I had exactly at the time, but I do remember releasing that video at some point around that time, where I parodied. I'll just tell you what it is later, and you can look it up for yourself. I'm not going to include it with this recording. But so we shook hands, and I got a picture with him. Really nice guy. And I asked him, "So what's going on? You guys showing anything?" And I ended up breaking the news that no, they were not showing anything. The reason why I took the picture was not just because I wanted to have a picture of me with him, but because I wanted I wanted to have proof when I posted up the story that yes, this is someone who did speak to this guy. And he told me that they were not showing anything at E3, and I was very disappointed about that. But you know what? That E3 was a good show anyway. I was happy I went. And it was what he did tell me was also that Sam wasn't there because Sam had been sick, quarantined, he couldn't fly, which was disappointing. But it was a cool experience meeting him. He's a really nice guy. Matthias, yeah, a really nice guy. And I'm sure that as I'm looping through these photos, as you're seeing with the photos on the screen, I'm sure that I'm going to toss in that photo that I have of me with posing with him, which actually turned into a bit of an internet meme after I got back. I noticed that somebody had taken my head and plastered Exhibit's face on it, which I thought was pretty funny. I guess I was the start of that internet meme or something. I don't know. But that image did hit the web after I posted up the confirmation that no, they weren't showing anything. The group was disappointed, but they understood, and it wasn't my fault. Don't shoot the messenger, of course. So time passes. I get back from E3, and well, I guess we just might as well just fast forward to what's going on right now. They just announced at the VGA Awards that they are doing a new Alan Wake game that is going to be for the Xbox Live Arcade. And everyone, I think that there's been a mixed feeling about that. I'm excited for it because I'm just happy to get my hands on any Alan Wake content. Obviously, the people have been talking about this and considering this for a while, given the fact of they had announced shortly around the time of E3 that while they were working on a new Alan Wake project, it wasn't Alan Wake 2, and it wasn't further DLC for the first Alan Wake game. So then everybody's like, so then what is it? I had my own theories, and there's an article on my website about it. People were theorizing that it could have been a Microsoft Kinect game, or it might have been... I thought for sure it could have possibly been a mobile game for the iPhone because they were going back into iPhone. They were going into iPhone development. Death Rally was very popular on the iPhone and iPad. My other theory, I've seen theories on I came up with theories on everything. I thought maybe it might have been an Alan Wake PC port or something along those lines. Just lots of different things. And they announced it's going to be an Xbox Live Arcade release, an exclusive to Xbox Live Arcade for the Xbox 360. and all the good that comes along with that. And then they showed the initial trailer for it at the VGAs, and everyone was like, well, at least I was. Well, this is Alan Wake. They kept all the gameplay intact, and that's what they're going to do. It's a new setting, new weapons, and a new villain that was teased at the end of the first game. Really excited about that. I don't want to go too much into it because you guys can just look at it yourselves. I'm personally really excited for it. I can't wait to try the demo. Yes, this is an Xbox Live Arcade game, so there's going to be a trial version, a demo version, if you will, that you will be able to try out. A lot of people complain that there was no Alan Wake demo on Xbox Live, so this game will have a demo. There's also announced that there's going to be a PC release of this game, of Alan Wake, of the first Alan Wake game, with the DLC. I don't know if the DLC is included. I don't think they will, but they said they will. They are porting the DLC as well, so that episodes 1 and 2 are going to be either available for extra purchase, free purchase, or just included with the game. We don't know, but they are working on that as well. It's going to be a Steam release though. There's not going to be a box copy. It's just going to be released through Steam. With no games for Windows Live configurations, as far as I can tell. People talked about it. Everyone universally seems to hate games for Windows Live, even though people used to really defend it. But I didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people said it was. But it's probably gotten worse, is my guess. I haven't used it in quite a while. Haven't had to. And everyone who pretty much vilifying Steam are very happy. It seems that they're doing a Steam release for that, so that's good. At least I mean, obviously Steam is a platform that's going absolutely nowhere, and it's, I think, the leader in the platform releases. But at least based on sales and probably what do you call it, install base or customer base, I should say. It's good, I'm pretty happy about that. I'm probably not going to get the PC version because, well, there's no reason. My computer's on the fritz, and I have a working 360, and I have a working game with a copy of the game on the 360. So I'm good, I'm fine with things the way they are. I'm fine with my 360 copy of the game, and I think that's cool. And I'm very much looking forward to the release of the new Alan Wake game. Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which is looking very, very cool. Don't want to spoil too much about that. I have my own theories about it. Definitely, there's a observatory in there. He's going to be fighting. It looks like he's fighting around Arizona and stuff like that, which is cool. Fighting through what looks to be nightmares that are going on in a world that he created, which is also awesome. And did anybody else notice that when he was in the trailer, when he was looking at the drive-thru movie playing, when you've seen the live action version, it looked like Mr. Scratch was kind of being like Max, dressed like Max Payne, and Alice Wake was dressed like Max Payne's wife. And it looked like the bedroom that they were in looked very much like Max Payne's bedroom. I just thought that was kind of funny. I did get a kick out of a lot. There are very, very many subtle tongue-in-cheek references to Max Payne in the Alan Wake games. I think that's really cool. And of course, the fact that they used James McCafferty, who was the voice of Max Payne and is still the voice of Max Payne. He is Max Payne in Max Payne 3. They used him as the voice of, well, the character that's very much like Max Payne in the Alan Wake universe, the Alex Casey books. He's the voice of Alex Casey, and he's also the voice of Tom. And the reason why I thought that was kind of funny, because it happened to Tom before it happened to Alan. I thought that was kind of cool that well, Max came first and Alan came afterwards, so they used McCafferty. I thought that was kind of a nice little tidbit, and also McCafferty does a great job. So those are all pretty much my memories that I can think of the Alan Wake franchise, and I'm thinking this video is probably going to be an hour for basically a series that has only seen one release, which is just amazing when you think about it, that there's literally been that many events about this budding franchise. Now, for those of you who are interested, Alan Wake's American Nightmare and the Alan Wake PC version release through Steam is going to be released in Q1 2012. Q1 usually is between, I don't know, I think it might end in April or something like that. But it's still going to, we don't have an exact date yet, but it is going to be for 2012, and it's going to be early 2012. Other things also, like I said, the Alan Wake's American Nightmare is going to be an Xbox Live Arcade exclusive, which means that you will need an Xbox 360 to play it. They're not releasing that to PC right now. There's been no announcement about that. But Alan Wake is coming to PC through Steam, and that's a Steam exclusive. There's not going to be a boxed retail edition of that. So if you want it, you'll have to install Steam and buy it through the Steam service. For those of you who'd like to see more reading or just like to see more videos about Alan Wake stuff that I've worked on and am exclusive, I recommend. I have the Alan Wake. I did a few Alan Wake videos for the site already up to this point, and I did want to redo them, which is why I've only talked about certain things that I've already covered in the other videos. I did a video called "So What Happened," where I detailed specifically what was going on with the backstory of Alan Wake. There's a music video I did of using Old Gods of Asgard's quote-unquote song Poet in the Muse, which is very nice and everyone seemed to like it. And also I did a video of top Alan Wake cutscenes, which you're welcome to check out. And of course the parody video that I did of where I poked a little bit of fun of Remedy, just a tad of satire of them when they made the announcement that they were doing a new Alan Wake game, but it wasn't going to be Alan Wake 2. I was reminded very closely of Tommy Wiseau, and I assumed that Tommy Wiseau is now working for Remedy. Obviously, that is again satire. Tommy, I love you. I mean nothing but to poke fun at and just in jest. And yes, yeah, yeah. You're not listening to this. Don't worry about it. Tommy Wiseau would never listen to this podcast. But you know. Like I said, it was just a little bit of fun, and I thought, Remedy was acting very similar to how Tommy Wiseau did in The Room, so I thought that I drew that similarity, and you can look up that on my website of it under the video. It's confidential Remedy, and that was fun. That was fun to make. So this is my this has basically been a little bit longer than I was expecting it to, but this is the end of my podcast. I'd like to thank you for listening. My next podcast, which is already in the planning stages, is going to be on the Resistance series for the PlayStation. I figured, I'm doing an Xbox series, do a PlayStation series, do an Xbox series, do a PlayStation series. So just, do a PC series. At some point I'm going to, do a PC series, but some of these are, possibly cross-platform. So just making everybody happy with all of that. So I'd like to thank you again for listening. This is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Take care of yourself, guys. Over and out.